The process of moving from Los Angeles to the small town of Independence, Oregon, took a whole lot longer than the 16-hour drive up the I-5 from LA to the little town that would become my home. In the way that so many couples with children choose to do when one parent gets a job out of state during the school year, I stayed behind with our 2 teenagers so that they could finish high school and middle school respectively. This hunkering down without my husband drove me nutsoid, frankly. But what truly made me the looniest was the loneliness of it all. My son had serious senioritis and 1 foot out the door, and my daughter had become a mutant alien with a new language of grunts and groans and an X-ray glare that could wither cactus. One thing kept me going. Proceeds from the sale of our California home would surely mean that we were headed for a more luxe life in the Beaver State. As it turned out, this expectation would prove to become a new rule for me. Almost nothing that seems like a sure thing ever is. I perused real estate websites to select the house of our dreams. Wood floors, large master bath, central air conditioning, to die for kitchen. And I found just the subdivision right near my husband's new place of employment. It was called the Edwards Edition, a carefully planned community that nonetheless looked like it was right out of the turn of the century. The homes had stately front porches, gingerbread trim, tree-lined sidewalks with a lovely village green at the center of things. But it turned out we couldn't afford anything on the market on those streets. The only other area I was sure we couldn't afford was an air park, a housing development I'd never heard of before, but which was by the municipal airport there and had taxiways running right up to the houses. Since I have a fear of flying, it bothered me not one whit that these also seemed unaffordable due to our pocketbook issues. I started looking online for bungalows resembling those of the Edwards Edition that were not actually in the vicinity of it. I found 3 homes. It was a little like being Goldilocks. I sent the listings to my husband and he stopped by this trio of houses. The first was being rented, so that would mean an eviction if we bought it. An unappealing idea to us. The second was sold actually before he finished his visit. But the third one seemed just right, so he bought it. That's right. I allowed my husband to buy our home without me ever seeing it. This fact turns out to be one of the only things that really amazes people about me, so I'm glad to share it. However, my husband left out a few details. The front room slopes slightly due to the fact that it once was a farmhouse. Also, the street it sits on doesn't match the address. Finally, it is the oldest house in the area, and the archaic wood shingle roof made it seem a tad out of place with the beautiful surrounding neighborhood. But my husband told me it had a really, really big garage. It was so big, in fact, that it had room for my office and 3 cars. This was because it had once been a barn. A barn! I was getting a house with a garage as big as a barn. I couldn't believe it. The online photos hadn't done it justice. As it turned out, we bought a house with a hangar for a plane in the air park. My husband managed to overlook telling me this detail, but as soon as I knew, I thought I should call a member of the board of the air park and introduce myself. This turned out to be one of those episodes that no one would believe on a TV sitcom, but happened in real life. This officer of the board of the Independence Air Park Homeowners Association disliked me sight unseen. "You don't fly, and we don't like your kind coming into our air park," he said. "You will ruin it." From my home in California, I tried to explain, in a way that must have sounded like Dorothy in the presence of the great Oz, that I was just trying to find a home. He was having none of it. "You people," he said, "don't appreciate what we've got here." After the phone call, I gripped my kitchen counter and resolved to soldier on and surmount this. But instead, I burst into the kind of body-racking, girly girl sobs that once came from me when frenemies froze me out at the high school lunch table. After I toweled off my ocular waterfall, I decided a visit to my new home was in order. So my 2 children and I packed up one weekend and flew off to Oregon, and my husband promised to take us straight away to his new workplace so that we could see for ourselves where he would be making his new professional mark on the world. We drove what seemed like forever in rain. When we arrived, we bounced up the stairs to his new digs, except that the door was closed. A lady came out and told us we couldn't go in, that it was in use by the gentleman that my husband was slated to replace. My husband reminded her that he had an appointment with his predecessor, which had been scheduled for some time now. She waved him off. "It's an emergency. He's meeting with someone. Come back in a half hour or so," she advised. There was no cheery hello. The door remained closed, and back down the stairs we all went. I felt the rise of those body-shaking sobs again, and I tried to swallow them. It felt like there was a ghost floating along with me, telling me to get used to sickening loss. It was the loneliest feeling I think I've ever had. But it turned out, at least that day, to be short-lived. "Let's all get back in the car," my husband said. After we climbed in, he confidently told us, "Portland is a great city and I want you and your mother to see it. It will be another long drive from here, but let's all go have a great day." And off we drove. His cell phone rang a short time later, and it was the woman who'd waved us off. I heard my husband tell her he had other obligations, and now he was completely unable to make the appointment. "We are headed into the city," he said. "It's really too late to turn around." And that was true. It was too late to turn around, in every way. And though I still felt the ghost of loneliness beside me, there was a lot less room there because my husband was sitting next to me, driving and driving. And this became one of the first things I learned about Oregon. You can't banish the loneliness of relocation in a small Oregon town instantly, just by going to Portland, but the trip there can make you feel a whole lot better sometimes, particularly if it is with people you love. I'm Ann Scheck, and that was my first lesson from a small town.